Hello and welcome back to the Morgan Branding Podcast. In this series, we are looking at book and podcast recommendations. And these are books and podcasts that I've been listening to or read or listened to over the past couple of years that have really helped me in my business growth. So the book I'm going to cover this week is called No Rules Rules by Reed Hastings, who's Netflix co-founder and CEO, and Eric Meyer, who's from InSeed Business School. So No Rules Rules says Netflix and the culture of reinvention. So when I got started with Morgan Branding back in April 2017, from the off, I knew I wanted to take all of the worst things and best things that I'd seen from managers before in my life and try and make a workplace that I would want to work in, or I would feel happy to work in and feel excited to work in, and try and not do some of the mistakes that some of the managers that I'd worked with before did, but also learn from some of the good managers that I had around how they, put their arm around me or looked after me to get the most out of me. So I can tell you some of the things that I had, growing up. One of the things that always sticks in my mind, and I've told this story to so many people, but it was a moment in my life that I said, I ain't ever going to do that to anyone else where I can. And it was my first job in a paper shop. So first job in a paper shop, started out stuffing the papers started out delivering the papers on a Saturday morning, ended up stuffing the papers because I could work out I could get another 15 quid by coming in, an hour, 15 minutes earlier. I've said in previous podcasts, I am not a morning person, never have been, never was then. So for me, if I was getting up at 7:45 to deliver papers, what's the difference of getting up at 5:30 or whatever time stupid o'clock it was to go and stuff the papers on a Saturday morning? So Saturday, Sunday morning, stuff the papers. That grew to Friday night. I worked in the paper shop Friday night after school. Friday was one of their busiest nights. Friday night, Saturday morning, Sunday morning, stuff the papers, work behind the counter on a Friday night, and still do my paper round. So I think at this point I would have been 14, 15. And then if I remember, I worked there when I was 15 and went through to when I was 16, because at 16 I could sell cigarettes at that point. It's now gone to 18, but at that point it was 16, and do the lottery. The lottery was the key one at 16. The lottery was the big thing within the shop. But I could sell cigarettes. The cigarette age actually moved, I think, when I was 16, 17 to 18, but the shop assistant, I don't know whether it was right, was still allowed me to sell cigarettes. However, what happened was I'd taken this job on. I'd gone from paper boy to stuff the papers to work on a Friday night to once I was 16. I used to work alone. I used to work midweek. I used to cover the boss when she was off. I was getting paid £3.50 an hour. The minimum wage for an adult was about £6.15 or something at that point. But all my mates were starting to get jobs in restaurants at £5 an hour plus tips. And I was working my backside off. Those of you that know me now, I wouldn't just stand behind the counter and do nothing. I was rotating stock. I was putting stuff on offer. I was restocking from the back. I had the shop keys at 16. I had the alarm code. I had the safe keys. When the boss went away, I covered her. I worked through the summer holidays. I just loved I'd say I just love the job. I've loved every job I've ever done. I just love working. I love helping. I love getting involved. I don't know why. I've always enjoyed it. So I remember at 16, I went to the boss and I said, could I get a pay rise? And what I wanted was £5 an hour. I didn't want the £6.50 that the other adults were on, who quite frankly were doing a worse job than me, often would need two when you'd only need one of me. And I was like, just £5 an hour would make me happy. And the boss came back and said, I've spoken to my accountant and the minimum wage was £3.15 and she was paying me £3.50, which was more than enough. What she then said was, I'll take away your responsibilities and you can just go back to working with somebody and don't work on your own. I was like, no, that's not what I want. I love the responsibilities. I love what I'm doing, but I just want the money for it. And I don't even want the money that you're paying somebody else. Really, could have been on £7.50 or a bonus ball, or she could have come up with some way to go, right, if your shop takings on this day, on an average Saturday, should have been £4,000. If you did £5,000 in a day, I'll give you this or whatever. Come up with some innovative idea to give somebody who was keen and eager at that age the foot up. And she didn't I was, as I say, I was 16, 17, so starting to want to go out. I was still getting up early at various points and stuff in the papers. I was covering when she was off. And she ended up losing me as a member of staff because she wouldn't pay me £5 an hour, not even £6.50. So for me, I've always tried to maintain that pay somebody what they're worth, not, pay somebody what they're worth, not what the cheapest is you can afford to pay them, basically, or the cheapest you're allowed to pay them, because you're going to lose. So retain the staff. And interestingly, when it came around to this book, which is what I was getting onto before I waffled, was this talks a lot about that and a lot about money and Netflix. And I'd already come up with that, and I was quite proud of that and paying staff. And some of the guys that we've had already, at 17, 18, earning over 10 quid an hour, 12 quid an hour, 13 quid an hour, we were already doing, and some of the things that I picked up from some of these books that companies like Netflix have had these problems. It's interesting to feel, or in my gut feel, I was on the right track. I went off and got a job in the local Indian takeaway, earning £5 an hour, £5.50, and I was driving my car and doing delivery, probably illegally without insurance. And she'd lost a really good member of staff at 17 that maybe could have been there 18, 19. I always looked at that as a business lesson. And they were one of the people that would moan that, it's not as busy anymore or whatever. But behind the counter in a shop, 60% of the time, there was some other great staff in there. I'm not saying that I was the only one. Was somebody that just was not interested, rather than if you walked in the shop, you end up probably spending double that you meant with me. It was only a sweet shop, but I'd give the experience. I'd, offer them the stuff. I'd make sure the countertop was good. I'd make sure there was good point of sale stuff. I'd make sure everything was clean and tidy. I'd make sure there wasn't rubbish everywhere. I'd make sure the shelves were stocked up properly. I'd make sure the stock was rotated. So the stuff, and when you have a good member of staff, and now I have several, and I'm really proud to say I've got several, is to me, you should do anything to keep hold of them and keep them happy. And this book talks about this a lot. Now, one of the things that this book changed my mind on is I'd read the Netflix slide deck from their culture deck that's available online. If you just Google like Netflix culture deck or HR deck, because I've done a lot of reading around how to try and make a good culture. A culture in the office isn't necessarily just about shoving a pool table or shoving a table tennis table in the breakout areas that nobody ever uses. And I've been in workplaces where kind of a corporate structure is trying to shove culture in, but to me, culture doesn't come that way. Culture comes from the bottom up. It doesn't come from the boss. The boss has to make the rules to allow the culture to happen and let the staff make the culture. We still don't, although definitely on the list for 2022 probably is pool tables and table tennis tables in the office, because I've been quite anti that. Doesn't give you culture. That isn't flexibility. And walked into flash offices and go, this didn't feel right. There was stuff there, but there wasn't the buzz and the hum and the good culture within the office. And this book really talks about culture. Now, I don't agree with everything in this book, and this is Netflix, and some people go, well, we can't afford to do this as a small business. Well, I disagree, because I think if you set the tone from being a small business, and this is how you want to operate, it flows through the business. So something that we always did was have unlimited holidays, unlimited flexibility. To me, you trust your staff, you pay them a lot of money, and you trust them to deliver. But then we don't trust them around holidays and lateness. It's not necessarily about the time that you spend here. It's what you're doing with that time and having the freedom to work on your agenda and way you do. Now, it does need trust and it does need good staff. There will be industries that this would not work in, I don't doubt. But I like to think that by trusting your staff to make the right decisions, unlimited holidays, well, we go, well, do you not worry that they'll never be here? Well, no, because they'll lose the job. But you've given them unlimited holidays. Yeah, but they're paid to do a job first. And part of that package is the unlimited holidays. If they don't do the job, they lose the job. We're having discussions now around maternity and paternity leave. And none of my staff at the minute have kids, but a lot of them are at that age where they're going to start having kids. How do we do that? So, but for me, it's a discussion between the team to what seems fair. And to create an environment that is fair. We can still make profit, and we will come to books. In fact, I don't know where that book is, but there'll be another book that I'll talk about that's Profit First, is called. And you can still make a profit as a business and be flexible. To me, actually, you're more likely to make a profit nowadays than being inflexible. Some of the companies that we work with, I just think sometimes they're archaic in the way that they think about things. And I think that we can all move on and do a little better. Now, this and Netflix, they embodied that. One of the things that they changed my mind a little bit, though, was on money. They still give flexibility and top of market wages and spend time working out what that top of market wage is. And what it has talked to me about is how I can make sure that money isn't necessarily an issue in my staff's life. So if we can get to a point where we can pay the best wage that that member of staff will be possible to earn based on their ability and level at that time, as well as giving them flexibility, how many stresses and strains and worries have I taken out of their life? And therefore, how much more productive can they be without that member of staff that comes in on a Monday morning or is 3 days before payday and having to get payday loans or short-term loans or whatever because they haven't made it to payday? I think that we can create a better workplace and a more caring workplace. One of the books that I'm going to come on to, again, is called Work Like a Woman from Mary Porters, who was Mary Queen of Shops. And this talks a little bit about that and how the workplace is very masculine and more feminine traits need to be in there, more loving, kind, caring. And actually, in Netflix, in a incredibly driven, creative company, how they have managed to maintain flexibility and give flexibility, as well as unbelievable growth, is staggering. I spoke to a guy who's a movie producer, and he said, their whole life is about getting money for movies. And when they worked with Netflix, it was like they had more money than it was like, if we can produce the movie for 16 million, what happens if we give it 25 million? Now, some people would argue that's not how you make a profit, but that's in an old model, in my opinion. And you look at a company like Netflix now and how much money they make and their stock valuation, and that we have no doubt that when Netflix started releasing movies, they would be great, as well as the platform that created. And companies like this will move into other directions that you go, wow, what a culture, what a place to work, rather than some of the big jobs or some of the big companies that people work for nowadays, or the old corporations that go, oh, it's crap to work for, but they pay great and the retirement will be good. Well, how bloody sad is it that you look forward to your retirement, not look forward to the 60 years that you will spend working? So Netflix is somebody that I've taken great inspiration from, ideas from, always open to new ideas and trying to set, give our own path for our staff. So No Rules by Netflix, well worth a read. Cheers. Now, you would look at this book and look at the title and go, Callum, this book is not aimed at you, and look at them comments.